All right, Mayor, we are up and ready.
Great, thank you. Good evening. This is the City of Morro Bay City Council regular meeting. It's Tuesday, February the 8th, 2022. It is 5:30 p.m. This meeting is being held via teleconference, and I will ask our esteemed clerk if she will call the order and establish a quorum. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Addis is joining us right now. I'll go through the others. Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Heller.
Here.
Councilmember Barton. Here. And Councilmember Addis. Here. And Mayor Heading.
Present. We do have a quorum. I will call this meeting to order. Pursuant to Assembly Bill number 361 in 2021-2022 and Government Code section 54953, this meeting will be conducted telephonically through Zoom and broadcast live on cable channel 20 and streamed on the city website. Please be advised that pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, the Government Code Section 54953, and to ensure the health and safety of the public by limiting human contact that could spread the COVID-19 virus, the Veterans Hall will not be open for this meeting. So we do have a quorum, and if I could call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and ask for our flag placement and move to our Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you for that. Mr. Newmeyer, our esteemed attorney, do we have a closed session report this evening, sir?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor. No closed session items to report tonight.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go ahead with our council member and staff announcements. Start with Councilmember Ford. Any announcements this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'm going to share my announcement with Councilmember Barton, and she's actually going to go first. As promised, we are going to report about our trip over to the Kansas Safe Parking site. So with your permission, Mayor, I'd like to have her start, and then I will finish up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, Councilmember Ford and I made a trip over to the Kansas Avenue Safe Parking area. We were both very intrigued with the setup of this thing, who's there, how they're running it, and so we got to have we spent about an hour and a half out there last week. So this all started with Joe Devonick, the SLO County's homeless manager and principal administrative analyst, came to the most recent EBAC meeting, and he shared the background on the safe parking site, such as that the site has been full since late October, and that was news to me. I didn't realize it had been that long. There are occasional openings, but they quickly fill back up. There are about 110 people in residence, 9 of whom are children. There are 15 dogs, 5 cats, 25 RVs, and 30 cars, not all of which are running. The county fire marshal, the safety officer, and representatives from environmental health visited early on to help get the program headed in the right direction. And visitors and volunteers from a number of different agencies have been paying visits there. So we have Transitions Mental Health comes in, community action teams consisting of county and city law enforcement, equipped with social service and crisis experts have been there. The probation department, Salvation Army goes by the Kansas site. CAP SLO, Community Action Partnership of SLO County, plans to have a dedicated permanent on-site spot for caseworkers and peer advocates by the end of February, which should be very helpful. And in addition, a variety of citizen volunteers drop by daily to help, perhaps bring food, different things. But on the day we were there, the veterinary students from Cal Poly were there, and there was also a woman who keeps her car filled with pet food, leashes, etc. She was paying a visit. So I'll pass it over to Councilmember Ford.
Thank you, Councilmember Barton. So I'll just pick it up with a few more amenities that they have there that was reported by Joe, is that they have 3 fully available showers and running water toilets. They have 8 porta potties and 4 hand washing stations. They have daily dumpster service. It's a 6-yard dumpster that remains on the site. And they have 4 deep basin running water sinks. As Councilmember Barton mentioned, we took about an hour on the site, walking around and speaking with Jeff Almashat, who is a safe parking operations manager for the county. He gave myself and Council Barton a tour around the property and was just so jovial and kind and open to any questions we had, was willing to give us as much time as we want, and was just excited that we were there in general, and did mention that we were the first council members in the county to visit the site, and that anyone out there who's listening, including our own council here, if anyone wishes to go visit the site, Jeff and Joe both are willing to arrange that at your convenience. Jeff basically, as we were walking around, I have to point out the obvious. You immediately are hit with the smell of a really strong gasoline odor, because the RVs are, most of them are generated by gasoline ran generators. And so it's pretty strong and pretty loud on that property. So that's kind of the first thing that kind of hits you when you get into the property, is that smell and the noise. But other than that, the site is really clean. Both Council Barton and I are very impressed with the cleanliness and how well maintained the site has been. Everyone seems to work together as a team when it's time to move RVs around and cars to make more room. They seem to work together. They had actually just finished up with moving a lot of their vehicles and some of the items that belong to the current residents, making sure that they clear spaces. So they've done a really good job maintaining that, but there's almost no shade. Pretty much the only shade that they offer there is a couple of umbrellas that were over to the side where the communal area is, and then if the RVs may have, some of them had little shades that come down from the RVs, but other than that, there really isn't any shade. There's no trees or anything. It's in a parking lot that's surrounded by chain link. There's currently no gate to this site, so anyone can pretty much come and go. And so they're working on getting a gate so that there is a little bit more security and awareness of who's coming and going, and to promote safety as well. Let's see here. Some of the great needs that was pointed out by Jeff is that healthcare and dental are really hard to come by. They don't really have anyone right now coming there to help with those 2 needs. As we heard from Councilmember Barton, mental health, they're starting to help with that. But as far as physical health and dental especially, it's a major issue for the residents there. And also they're asking for anyone who's willing to donate their time, any mechanics that are out there who are willing to come and help work on vehicles to get them up and running. There are quite a few vehicles, as Councilmember Barton mentioned, that are not running right now. And so it really will be an expense for the county to remove those vehicles eventually, or the residents themselves to try to get those cars up and running, and RVs. Let's see here. Donations are welcome, but we need to keep in mind that clutter is an issue and many vehicles do not have any more space for items. So for example, if we were to bring books for the children that are on site, there may or may not be room for those books. I mean, something that small could actually be an issue. So donations are kind of difficult. They're welcomed, but where do you store them when they arrive? Also refrigeration, when donations are brought that need to be refrigerated. On the site, there is no place to put those refrigerated items. So keep that in mind if you are bringing perishable donations that, you know, a few campers have something to store it in, but otherwise there's nowhere to put those items if they're not consumed right away. And let's see here. Yes, we already talked about the clinic that came out from Cal Poly to help with the animals. And just one last thing to talk about is the friendliness of the current residents. Just an example, Laurel and I were standing out in the sun for quite a while, and we probably looked like we were melting, and one of the residents, you know, walked over with their personal water bottles and, you know, offered them to us out of their stash, and we're just so kind, and just everyone waved, said hello, welcomed us. So I just encourage anyone, you know, on our staff and our council members who'd like to reach out. I can share his contact information with you so that you can see the site as well. And lastly, to wrap it up, Mr. Almashat's hope for those living on the site is that the residents want and are able to keep moving forward. He said it's actually probably going to be their slogan. SLO County is lucky to have attracted Jeff to this job. He brings a lot of years of experience in SLO County from working with the homeless in Atlanta. So we're really lucky to have him here. And that pretty much wraps up our experience there. So if anyone has any, I don't even know if this is a question time since it's a weird, like we're announcing and reporting at the same time. So, but if anyone has any questions, we're willing to answer. Thank you so much.
A great report. Thank you both for the site visit and the excellent content. We appreciate it. Is there a phone number to call regarding donations, or a website or an email address, or if anybody was interested that might be listening, should they contact one of you two? What's the best way?
But Laurel, do you have, I can chime in if you need.
If you've got that, like maybe Jeff's number right in front of you, that would be great.
I probably won't give out his phone number, but I can pull up, Mayor, if you can come back to me at the end, sure. After all the rest of the announcements, I can give you that. But in the meantime, if anyone would like to have information, if I cannot get that to you in a timely manner, you can always contact me through our city website. I'm always willing to help anyone out who is interested in making contact with the individuals, with either Jeff or Joe. But I will work on getting that email address for you. Thank you. Great,
thank you. Any council member questions of Councilmember Ford or Barton? Well, again, thank you guys for visiting and relaying the information to us. Councilmember Heller, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Laurel and Jen, for doing this. It's a really great report. I've driven by the place a few times, but I haven't really gone in and walked around and learned as much as you did. So really super information. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. My announcements today have to do with a couple of fun things for those of you who can't afford to buy an electric car. And I am in that category. I found a really cool place on Main Street, Central Coast Cart Rentals. And I don't know if you know about it, but they put their little vehicles out in front a few days a week. And they have a variety of scooters, electric scooters. They have a 4-person golf cart that's all electric that they rent by the hour, but they also have some really cool little electric scooters that look like they're fun that you can buy or rent. And they've told me they're street legal. They don't go any more than 30 miles an hour or so. I have not confirmed this with Chief Cox yet. So whether they're street legal or not, I can't really attest to. But they really look like fun. And for a town like us, great for tourists, but also great for residents who don't want to run around in their car all day long if they could perhaps use an electric vehicle of some sort instead. So I encourage you to go by. The owners are local, and it's really a neat place. The other thing I want to talk about, of course, I have to talk about municipal waste or plastics just about every meeting since I'm on the board of the Integrated Waste Management Authority. And in case people don't know, there is a state law regarding the use of plastic foodware, accessories, and condiments. Most places like McDonald's and larger companies understand the law in the state of California that you cannot give out plastic utensils or straws without asking first. But there's some smaller businesses here that still aren't aware of that law. And beginning June 1st, I believe, enforcement of that law, however that'll be enforced, is going to come into play. So if you're at a little local restaurant and they are giving you plasticware to take home or condiments that look like they're wrapped in plastic and you haven't asked for them, you might want to just say, hey, no thanks. And by the way, in California, you're supposed to ask us first. Or call me and I'll go talk to them. I love talking about this stuff and love meeting people. So that would be great. And as usual, if you're interested in meeting with me and talking with me about any city issues, I love going to Buttercup Bakery in the mornings. So please give me a call or a text and I'll meet you there for a pastry. That is the last announcement. Thank you, Mayor.
The question was, are you buying?
I can't have anyone buy anything for me. And of course, to be reciprocal, I am not buying anything for anybody.
There you go. Okay, good answer. Just was testing you.
I don't want a crowd.
Thanks for that report. Appreciate it, Jeff. Councilmember Addis, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a personal announcement, but I do want to say happy birthday to a certain extent. Tomorrow would be Councilmember Davis's birthday, and I was thinking about him today and the time that we spent on council together, and so just wanted to honor him with an announcement here this evening that tomorrow would have been his next birthday.
Thank you so much for that, and we do miss him dearly. A couple of things. I am now past president of the APCD board, having fulfilled my 1-year chairmanship of that board, and so I'll go on to on with the executive committee. But they're starting a new innovative program. As you know, on the Napomo Basin, particulate matter from automobile riding or vehicle riding on the beach has caused tremendous air quality issues. The new program, which is a pilot program, involves the distribution of particulate matter air filters. These are small units that can filter out particulate matter down to and below 10 micrograms, which is a threshold for toxic particles that get into the lung. They're starting with high-risk individuals that are income challenged in the area on the Napomo Basin. And if that program proves to be successful, it will be rolled out to the full county. So I look forward to sharing, hopefully in the future, the results of that with you. These are very powerful filters that are very quiet, can be placed in a room, and will completely filter the air. And by the way, if you get the right unit, it can also filter about 95% of COVID-19 viral entities. And so these have become very inexpensive, very effective, and they will be doing the APCD staff will be doing follow-up monitoring to determine the effectiveness of various models. And so more to come on that, but I think an exciting program, especially now with the quality issues that we're seeing on the basin. And by the way, the basin, since they have reached a stipulated agreement to revegetate the areas that were impacted by rioting and decrease the rioting area. The reductions have approached about 40% in emissions to date, which is very significant, and that's over a period of about 3.5 years. The goal is over 5 years to decrease emissions by 50%, and I do believe that that will be achieved with regard to the controls that have been in place. So I want to let you know about that this evening and call on Mr. Collins. Anything to share with us tonight?
Nothing to share. Thanks, Mayor and Council.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Scott. With that, I do believe we have Mr. Endersby present. Eric, are you with us?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
Great. And I know we might be having some audio problems with Mr. LaFay, but you have a presentation to the Morro Bay Harbor Department by the Friends. Did you want to go ahead and move forward with that? And I think you're going to be in contact with Bill when he might want to be able to respond.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a quick intro to Bill. I think we've got our technical difficulties worked out. We've been texting feverishly here for the last couple of minutes. I think we got it figured out.
Good.
So I'll introduce Bill, and hopefully he'll be able to come on and take it away. So Friends of the Morro Bay Harbor Department's a 501c3 that was formed in 2014. It was the brainchild of Bill LaFay, a Morro Bay resident and former Harbor Advisory Board member for many years. While on the Harbor Advisory Board, Bill saw firsthand the Harbor Department's need for additional financial and other support for training and some services and things. And so along with the primary founding member, Roger Allen, and then Harbor Department folks, Lori Stiltz and Becca Kelly, Bill took matters into his own hands and really single-handedly formed the Friends, formed the corporation, got it up and going, and he's really all things Friends of the Morro Bay Harbor Department. So with the very generous help of this community, since inception, the Friends have raised about $175,000 total to go towards various departmental needs. Most notably, about $15,000 towards lifeguard tower acquisition and refurbishment, which we're doing another lifeguard tower right now. About $10,000 towards the new Sandspit emergency phone, that remote phone out there on the Sandspit. $20,000 to replace the Sea Line dock a couple of years ago. About $2,500 for a new beach wheelchair for the loaner wheelchair program we have for the beach. And most recently, $100,000 to refit surplus Harbor Patrol vessel that we got from Port San Luis to replace our nearly 40-year-old old Patrol Boat 68, which is time to retire. And this fundraising also included the $100,000 included a $20,000 matching donation from Castle Wind LLC, which is another brainchild of Bill. So Bill's been fantastic. He's been a real dynamo. He's I can't say enough about him and the community for the generous support. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bill LaFay, the president, chief cook and bottle washer for the Friends of the Harbor Department. So hopefully Bill can hear us and he's ready to come on. Bill?
Welcome, Bill.
See, he's there. Can you hear us, Bill?
Bill, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
You can. Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you to Eric. Eric and his staff at the Harbor Department work tirelessly to provide the safety and all the health and everything at the harbor. I mean, that is kind of like the, how can you say, if anything goes wrong in the harbor, they all know where to go. And it's being down there and seeing the boaters, the people that need help, they know where to go. I mean, the harbor is the pulse of the city of Morro Bay. And so I feel that as a citizen, I needed to give a little bit to the community. And so that's why I undertook this endeavor. And I'm continuing to undertake endeavors for the Friends. And when there's a need, we figure out how to raise the money to achieve our end results. But it's the community really that contributes the money and really respects the harbor. And I'm just the facilitator, and I just make it happen as best of my ability. So I really want to thank Eric and his staff and the city council for what you do for our city, because you do a dynamo job in You know, a lot of people criticize you, but you do the best job you can possibly can. So I thank you.
Well, Bill, thank you. And I just, on behalf of the council, want to thank you for all the work that you've done to raise money for the Harbor Department. I know Eric and staff have benefited greatly from that. I know you don't like to be recognized, but your leadership has been outstanding. And I just want to say a great big thanks to you for not only what you've done, but what you continue to do for the city through the Harbor Department.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
And Eric, thank you, sir. Appreciate that presentation. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Okay, I think Councilmember Ford, you do have contact information for us. You want to share that?
I do, Mayor. Sorry for the delay there, not having it readily available. Joe Desvonic, he's the homeless manager for our county. His email address is J for Joe, JDZVONIK @co.slo.ca.us. And then one more, if you want Jeff Almashat, the operations manager, the one who's on site, who would probably be the easiest one to get a tour from. His email address is JALMASHAT@co.slo.ca.us. So J Almashat and then the address. So either one of those, you'll find somebody who's willing to help. But if you would like to reach out to myself or Councilmember Barton, we can go that route as well. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that very much. Okay. That brings us to public comment. This is general public comment for items that are not on the agenda that you'd like to speak to regarding the city, or for any items on the agenda that you'd like to speak to for which you can't remain to speak to during the regular time that we would call upon you. So again, this is general public comment. And James, I'll go ahead and open up public comment.
All right, I have a hand raised from Shayna Paulson.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Shayna.
Thank you. As was said, my name is Shayna Paulson, and I work at the Community Action Partnership of San Luis Obispo and their Child Care Resource Connection. But I'm here tonight representing the We Are the Care initiative. So I want to start by acknowledging and thanking you, Mayor, for your engagement and support of childcare and early learning in the city of Morro Bay. You recently attended the We Are the Care meeting with partners Wendy Went of First Five San Luis Obispo County and Rochelle Belay-Sutton of the Child Care Planning Council, along with 6 other city mayors, for a conversation about our regional child care crisis and how local governments can play a role in solving it. And so we're really excited about this movement and the work that cities have already begun in terms of dedicating funding and programming to support the child care sector. And of course, we're looking forward to ongoing partnership to further our local economic recovery by supporting the child care sector so that parents can work and children can continue to thrive. Tonight, I'm here to highlight a few different ways that this council can continue to support childcare and early learning. First, we of course want to encourage the city of Morro Bay to have more of your members informed of the childcare landscape and needs. I know we've called upon Councilmember Addis to keep you informed of what was going on when she served as your liaison, but we want to additionally promote some increased knowledge and skill building of municipal staff related to childcare businesses, the permitting process, what it means to operate a childcare business, to sustain it, and to grow it, and to build new childcare within the community. This would really help garner support for childcare as part of your essential infrastructure, and allow childcare to grow within the community. Of course, in order to build and foster this knowledge, I want to connect you with the San Luis Obispo Child Care Planning Council. They are there to provide expertise and assistance. But one resource they encourage you to look at is the Early Learning Nation Progress Rating Toolkit. It's a mouthful, but fortunately, I think a link was already sent to you, Mr. Mayor. But it's a tool that is available online, and it's a way for cities and communities to look at their current child care commitment and involvement, It has 6 key steps. So assemble stakeholders, designate a point person, assess your community progress, develop an action plan, check in with your parents and key stakeholders, and then reevaluate, see how you're doing and what opportunities are arising. And so we hope that you'll take a look at the toolkit and reach out to the Child Care Planning Council for further guidance and support. Right now, more than ever, children and families need to be prioritized, and as does our economic recovery in the community of Morro Bay. So thank you so much for your time. If you're wanting to get involved or know more about We Are the Care, please connect with First 5 San Luis Obispo County. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Shana, and thanks for all the work that you're doing to improve childcare in our county. Next, public comment. James?
Next up, we have Betty Winholtz.
Welcome, Betty.
Thank you. This is Betty Winholtz. I have 3 topics I'd like to squeeze into my 3 minutes. The first is to highlight Todd's garage. I think you know that we've had the rash of catalytic converters that have been stolen off of hybrid cars, and that when that hit its peak in Morro Bay, he invented at a less expensive level an item that could be attached to the bottom side of a car that was even cheaper than the manufacturer and saved several people that had been robbed. But that news got out to the Valley, and he was highlighted on one of the TV stations over in the Valley in Fresno, and has been receiving a lot of phone calls and emails asking about his product. And I just think it's really nice to highlight a local business that has done a good thing and is being acknowledged outside of our community. The second thing is really more about questions. It's again about the WRF. I feel like the road between the roundabout and South Bay Boulevard is probably, or is definitely not up to the specs of us public that are having to use it as our detour. I don't know if there's any way to make those plates better. It's really hard on cars. And if there's any way that Anvil can improve that, that would be really helpful. But my question is about the closure there at South Bay Boulevard. I think it originally stated it would be for 8 weeks. I think that statement was made almost 6 weeks ago. We only have a couple of weeks left, and it doesn't appear that that's going to be finished. And so I'm wondering if there is a new timeline that's going to be published with regard to the closure at South Bay Boulevard. And then my last topic does have to do with public comment. Had a little rude awakening this afternoon. Did not understand that our public comments had to be in by 10 o'clock a.m. Of yesterday and today. I learned that this morning and made that deadline. But if staff is not available to then publish it by 10 o'clock, it doesn't get published. And I think I personally feel like they should be able to go back and do that. But if you're going to insist on keeping that as a barrier, I think that needs to be published in your agenda to let people know, if they want their correspondence published, that there is a deadline and what time that deadline is and what the exceptions are to that in order to get it on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. James, next public comment, please.
Next raised hand is from Nicole Dorfman.
Okay. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Nicole. Welcome.
Hi. Can you see me?
We see your picture.
Oh, okay. So I just want to say good evening. It's been quite a while since I've tuned in, so thank you for continuing to do the important work of the city. And my primary comment today is request that you return to in-person meetings or perhaps do a hybrid. At this point, we have heard the governor say that he is looking to lift or let the regulations expire outlier. In fact, and I imagine you know this, that Morro Bay is quite an outlier in being completely virtual. I know the San Luis Coastal Unified School District Board has a hybrid where you can come in person or you can participate via Zoom. Our County Board of Supervisors is all in person. So for me, it feels like a real barrier. And when I asked if you could see me, I can only see 3 of you at this point. I cannot see Mayor Heading. There he is. And I cannot see Councilwoman Barton. And it feels like for me to be able to look you in the eye and for you also to look me in the eye, there's no way for me to put my camera on at this point. It feels very disconnected. And there you are. Thank you for coming on, Councilwoman Barton. So I'm just asking for a return to normalcy, if possible. I mean, at the beginning, I had a very poor connection. I could barely hear what was going on. And also, I have no idea who else is there. So if I had supporters or people, we have no idea who else is there and who might be in support or be in opposition to anything at all. So I'm urging you to please, for your next meeting, at least do some sort of hybrid where people can come and face our elected officials in person, face-to-face. That face-to-face contact absolutely makes a difference. So the next thing I'd like to comment is actually on C4. I won't be able to stay too much longer, but my feeling is that our country is already so divided, and that by our council taking up these issues, which I believe are beyond the scope of the city of Morro Bay, such as creating a resolution about single-payer health care. That's not something anybody campaigned on. I don't recall getting a survey or a poll asking how I feel about that issue or my family. If you all want to send a message as a private person, of course, go ahead to do that. But to send a message on behalf of the people of Morro Bay, I think unless you really have an idea of our opinion on that, absolutely it should be a no-go. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. James, next public comment.
All right, next raised hand is from Melanie Williams-Mahan.
Okay. Welcome, Melanie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you. First of all, Nicole and Betty, that's so cool about Todd's Garage. Great. My topic tonight, my main topic is please stop with the resolutions. We all know why it's happening. We also know that we care more about our sewer and the threat of fines because it's pretty clear placing one of our very expensive, very necessary infrastructure projects on a slide zone was a poor choice. It's going to cost us again and again. Remember that old commercial that it's not nice to fool Mother Nature? That's a long time ago, but I remember it. That's kind of what you've done here. You're ignoring Mother Nature. The hills all around our giant sewer are slipping. I noticed it driving into town today. Beautiful drive until you the sewer as our southern gateway, and that's just not that impressive. I think that some of you up there need to speak to your constituents more. You're not solving problems that are important to so many of us. And some of you are merely campaigning to move beyond our little town. And could we please get the water board's response as it was written by them? Because people who care are still documenting this long, long journey. We need real information about the problem sewer at hand, not redundant and divisive resolutions. Please do the jobs we elected you to do. Also, where is the money coming from for this trip to Washington? And you feel Washington, D.C. is okay to visit in person, but we can't see you face to face here. So why do you think D.C. is safer than our city? Because I can promise you it's not. Again, in this day and age, virtual seminars are a great way to go, and even those cost money. So I wish you guys would think about, what you're doing and the important things to us. It's the same page as the council. And, we're really worried about some of these things, and we're not being told that anything's going well or whatever. I mean, please help us. Please stop with these resolutions, and please let us know what's really happening here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. James, next public comment, please.
I see no more raised hands, so you should be good to go.
Okay, thanks. I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to us. Betty, thank you for mentioning Todd's Garage. I did see that report in the news and very proud of what he's done, and thank you for that recognition. If I could just get an update, if Greg is here or anybody on the WRF timeline for closure, South Bay Boulevard. We have an update on that. Hey, Greg.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
That is something that our project management team is currently evaluating. We do expect it may go a bit over. We're working with Caltrans to better understand our timeline. As soon as we have a finalized timeline, we will, in coordination with the project management team, submit a construction notice to the public. And we can also come back to the next council meeting to make an announcement about that as well.
Good, I appreciate that, and I know the plates are an issue. I do realize they're temporary, and that any idea of perhaps when those might be done?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have that information available right
Perhaps we can get an update maybe at the next meeting.
Sure.
Great, thank you for that. And then, Mr. Collins, did you want to comment, or Mr. Newmeyer, regarding the information on public comments by 10 a.m. and what our policy is, just as a reminder again?
Sure. Yeah, we appreciate the community's patience on this one. We were throwing a curveball with a recent decision on the Sierra Watch case. We were not required by law to publish correspondence, but it's been a practice of this council and likely a good one. But because of this new law, we had to go back and evaluate how and when we publish things. And main issue here is we have to provide a paper copy of the whatever's added as an amendment to the agenda. So 10 a.m. is sort of where the cutoff is for us to make it work. If we get correspondence at 9:59 a.m., likely not going to make it because we need time to pull it all together. So we may need to account for that in whatever we publish out to the community. So we'll make that change moving forward. And also remind people to use the instructions on the agenda themselves. It provides the email address to send it to so that staff can expedite the publishing of this material for the public. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And also, I believe with the governor's lifting of the mask mandate, we anticipate coming back live. Do you have a date for that?
I will just important to note that mask mandate lifting only applies to vaccinated individuals. Right. So I'm not sure that's necessarily the threshold. There will be an agenda discussion, I think, at the next council meeting because we're following, I think Chris can help me out here. I think it's AB 361 teleconferencing law that was passed last year that provides the opportunity to hold these meetings virtually because of the emergency. So I think that'll be another time to evaluate that. Further, important to note that the Vets Hall currently is used as the testing facility for the North Coast for COVID-19 and is probably the most heavily used of all the centers in our county. So that's another factor. We couldn't possibly do meetings and serve that purpose at the same time. So that will be a factor in our analysis when we bring this back next council meeting.
Great. Thanks, Scott, for the update. I appreciate that. Okay, that takes us to our consent agenda. These are items A1 through A5 on our agenda this evening. I'll go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment on the consent agenda only. And James, do we have any public comment?
We have a raised hand from Betty Winholtz.
Okay. Welcome, Betty.
Thank you. This is Betty Winholtz. I'm going to read the statement that I sent to you because I think it's important for the public to hear it. Dear City Council, it is irrational to declare these two parking lots, I'm speaking now to item A4, it is irrational to declare these two parking lots with a total of 115 parking places as surplus property. Your most recent parking study made the following two observations: that, quote, the most highly used parking area on the Embarcadero is between Beach and Pacific, both during peak parking times on weekends and weekdays in the summer and in off-season. And the second statement was, quote, parking availability along the busiest portions of the Embarcadero has been perceived to suffer from a lack of availability and congestion, and these perceptions were confirmed by that study. Therefore, in light of these findings and understandings, I believe that your selling of these 115 parking spaces between the two lots that serve our industry, which is tourism, is not common sense. It doesn't fit to say that they are, quote, necessary for the city's use, since the city's economic well-being depends on tourists. I did not see in the parking study where these parking lots were addressed, so I'm curious as to what the leaseholders feel about your selling of these lots, and what the Chamber of Commerce, who's all about business, thinks about these as well. Perhaps your strategy in bringing in the parking meters is to create more spaces by moving people along. I don't know to what extent that will really work, because some people will pay extra just to stay for as long as they can, as well as those boutique hotels that have overflow parking and that park there 24/7 all through the weekend. The new one that was reviewed at Planning Commission last week is an example of that. 9 rooms with no parking off-site. Market Street has 9 street parking spaces on one side. If you assume each street has that many spaces, it will take 6.5 city blocks on both sides for parking, excluding driveways, to compensate for the lack of this over 100 parking places that you're going to eliminate. That takes you all the way up to Piney Street. It takes you into the business district and residential district. So my concern is, without a specific plan that has worked out the details, this proposal to sell these 2 lots is damaging to the businesses and neighborhoods, because this is not surplus property. It's property that we depend on for our tourism, which is our industry. And I wish that this had been under not a consent item. I think it needs to be pulled. Everyone in town is concerned about parking, whether it's uptown or in the Embarcadero, and this should be a community discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. James, next public comment.
I see no raised hands, so you should be good to go.
Okay, thanks. I'll close public comment on the consent agenda, bring it back to council. And I'll go ahead and pull A4 to answer Betty's questions, or question, I should say, perhaps questions. Any other items to pull?
Mayor, I'd like to pull A5, please.
A5, okay. Got it.
And I'll move approval of items A1 through A3 on the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Heller, seconded by Councilmember Addis to approve A1 through A3. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I pulled A4 to ask perhaps Mr. Collins or Mr. Graham to comment on the surplus property issue and the item of issue with regards to parking. Any staff member, Scott, you think?
Yeah, I'll let Scott kind of cover the nuances of surplus and what that all means, but just in regards to the good question on parking, yeah, certainly the parking study conducted by Walker shows there's impact throughout the waterfront. The area in question here does have a pretty significant impact. If a project were to move forward on this property, certainly a big part of that would surround parking and how to accommodate any lost spaces. So it's a salient point raised by the community member, and it's something that would be addressed if a project came forward. But this is not actually a sale of the property tonight. There's no development in front of council to be considered, so it's really the state requirement that we take this action before those things would occur. But I'll turn it over to Chris and Scott to fill in the blanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris or Scott?
Mayor, I just wanted to make the observation that this action tonight is largely to bring the city into compliance with a state requirement called the Surplus Lands Act. Before the city can sell any city land under relatively new amendments to the Surplus Lands Act, the city has to offer the land to basically affordable housing developers. The city does not have to sell it to affordable housing developers. The city does not have to sell it for less than the fair market value. The city does not have to enter into a purchase sale agreement with anyone that comes forward that says they want to put affordable housing on it. But as we all know, the state of California has been pushing for affordable housing throughout the state. And so now there's a requirement that cities basically give an opportunity first by posting statewide land before they would sell it to anybody else through this process. So, this is a requirement for the city to do before any city land could be sold. And to be clear, as the city manager said, tonight's action is not to sell the land. It's not to even talk about, a potential buyer that might want to purchase the land. It's not to discuss affordable housing to go onto the land. It's to comply with state requirements that precede any possible purchase sale agreement for land. So hopefully that clarifies the intent of this report. It's a compliance with state law.
It does. And to be sure, if such sale is contemplated, it would be fair to state that there would be significant public comment opportunities, public hearing, et cetera, and a significant chance for the public to weigh in on that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There would need to be an agreement that comes to council that's proposing the sale of the land. And then that agreement itself, would be subject, of course, to, public comment, a council discussion, and then council would consider whether they actually wanted to sell the land. This is largely the city making sure it's compliant with state law before any possible future action would be taken to sell the land.
Good. Thank you, Chris, for that clarification. With that, I'll move approval of A4.
Mayor?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Councilmember Ford, please.
That's okay. I just, before we go any further, I want to state that I'll be recusing myself from any vote dealing with the property 781 Market Street.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. For the remaining council members, we do have a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Thanks. Mayor Heading moved to approve A4, seconded by Councilmember Addis. Any further discussion?
See my little hand there, Mayor?
Oh, yes. No, your background is the same
white
color.
Background.
I can't see it. Thank you.
I may have to change my background.
Go ahead, sir.
A few questions. So, for our city attorney, so is affordable housing the big issue here, that it has to be offered to developers who do affordable housing?
So what this law requires is that there must be a notice to housing developers and local agencies that could pursue affordable housing and say, this land is potentially available, and it has to be noticed to them for 60 days. And then there's also an HCD, Housing and Community Development state website, where also the city puts a notice on. And so the city basically needs to wait 60 days and see if anybody is interested. And if somebody is interested, then the city has to spend up to 90 days in good faith negotiations with them, over whether they have a proposal for the city that the city, wants to in good faith consider. The city is under no obligation to sell the land to the individual, or group. They just need to engage in good faith negotiations. And the land largely would need to be used in this process for affordable housing.
Okay. Have we put out that notice, or is that something we are going to do? Or
That notice will be sent out pursuant to the resolution that's being proposed tonight for passage. If the resolution is not passed, then the notice would not be published.
Okay, thank you for that. Question for Scott Graham. Can this be used for, well, just tell me in terms of zoning and the downtown waterfront strategic plan, what can this property be used for as it currently stands?
Its zoning is for visitor serving commercial uses, and it doesn't allow for housing. The Surplus Land Act is kind of broad, sweeping, legislation that they passed that sort of picks up all property, sort of regardless of what the allowed uses are on it. So it does create, it does sound kind of weird that we're offering it up for affordable housing, yet the zoning doesn't allow for it. Just kind of an issue with the actual legislation. And my understanding is there's a kind of a push to sort of make some changes to resolve that issue, because it is kind of an odd thing that we go before councils, not just us, but other jurisdictions doing the same thing. And we bring this forward to you and you go, yeah, but our zoning doesn't allow for the use. I mean, that's an odd kind of thing.
So if we offer it up and an affordable housing developer comes forward, is willing to pay the appraised price, are we obligated to change the zoning to accommodate that, or do you know how that would even play out?
We are not. No, we are not. And some of these questions underscore the reason why the League of California Cities, among other groups, have been proposing amendments to the Surplus Land Act, because Morro Bay is not the first and won't be the last city that will have an agenda item like this tonight, to make sure that they're in compliance with the Surplus Land Act. But to be clear, there is no obligation or duty to change the zoning to allow housing, but we do have a duty under state law to go through this process right now. And in good faith, if someone comes forward and has an amazing plan, then the city at its discretion can consider changing the zoning as well.
I see. So in terms of parking, it is a key issue down there. Some people think it'd be a great location for a parking structure. If someone came forward, first of all, has this property been publicly advertised?
This has been subject of closed session, so I don't know, Mr. Dearmeyer, you may want to.
So the subject tonight for the council's consideration that we brought forward was compliance with the Surplus Lands Act, and whether or not the council, in its consideration, will approve the resolution that would allow the city to provide notice both on HCD's website and then to local groups and agencies for 60 days, whether this land, that this land is available. So
we can't answer to the public whether or not this property's been listed. I thought McCarty Davis had a listing on it. Is that true, or can we not even acknowledge that?
Well, of course, this land is something that the city has considered different ideas for, but at this point, the city needs to comply with the Surplus Land Act if the city has any interest in actually selling this land to somebody else. I mean, this is something that needs to be done first, and in good faith, we need to consider any possible any offers that come in that meet the Surplus Land Act requirements.
Okay, if someone wanted to make an offer and build a parking structure there and was going to pay full price for it, they could bring it forward now. Is that fair to say, or not?
Certainly they could. I mean, the city, anybody could make a proposal to the city, for purchase of any city property, really. I mean,
okay.
Whether or not, of course. I mean, somebody could put in an offer to buy the land City Hall sits on. I mean, where it goes is another question.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, there's motion and a second. Any further discussion? Looking for hands again. Sorry, I didn't see yours. The background was deceiving. We'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Ford is recused.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-1 with Councilmember Ford having abstained.
Thank you. Councilmember Heller, sir, A5.
Thank you very much. I pulled A5 because I think I know there's some questions amongst the public about this particular item, and I thought maybe somebody, I'm not sure if Scott Collins or our city attorney could just kind of give a little background on this issue.
Sure, that'd be great. Chris?
Sure, absolutely. I prepared a short staff report to explain the reimbursement agreement that's before council tonight, but I definitely welcome the opportunity to address the major points and the reasons why we're doing this. Definitely want the public to understand, what this is before the council. So the name of it, of course, is a reimbursement agreement. And so the money that's being provided to the city, if the city approves this contract, is to reimburse the city for costs and fees that the city will be spending anyways on staff, consultants, and legal. And so the city of Morro Bay, frankly, has not had a project of this nature or size anytime in the recent past. And so the city is not used to seeing reimbursement agreements coming before it like this. But this is routine for cities all up and down the state. Whenever there's a large development, most cities ask the developer to pay for the city costs that are going to be incurred anyways that aren't captured in the normal routine fees that are paid when applications are submitted. And so Scott Graham and I talked about this, Director Graham, and he said, he doesn't recall recently any other projects where we would have done a reimbursement agreement like this, but he did mention that he knows in Pismo, they've done a number of these. And for cities that are doing a lot of development, these are routine. And, it would be, basically, if this agreement wasn't approved, then the city would be taking at least $175,000 out of its general fund to pay for these costs as we process this application. So the developer has agreed to reimburse us for those. And to be crystal clear, none of this money is to be used for anything other than to cover the costs that are already being incurred to process all the different aspects of this project. And also there are multiple places in this agreement where it's crystal clear that the city's under no obligation to approve the project, to approve any of the permits that come before the city, to approve any of the CEQA entitlements that come before the city. And I think it's a function of Morro Bay is largely built out and there isn't a lot of development. So we have not seen reimbursement agreements like this really come before the city. If this was not approved, in my opinion, we'd be leaving $175,000 or more laying on the table that the city would just have to pay out of the general fund anyways. So, I would recommend approval, as I mentioned in the staff report. I also wanted to point out that this type of agreement, at least the way this one was negotiated, it provides for very strong indemnification for the city from the beginning of the process. Typically, when development's done, whether it's small or big, when the permits are issued, then we get indemnification for any problems from the actual developer or applicant. This reimbursement agreement provides us with indemnification against any lawsuits or issues that may pop up from the beginning. So we get our bills paid and we get indemnification, but it's not giving the city any extra money. It's to cover costs that would be incurred anyways and have already occurred.
Okay, and then my other question is, there's something in there about 12-month, I don't know if it's a liability issue or the funding issue, it goes for 12 months. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Which section or could you be a little more clear on?
Well, it's like on the last page and it talks about, I think it's the term of liability with respect to permitting and so forth. I'm sorry, I don't have that whole.
Oh, no, I have the agreement in front of me. Trying to find the 12-month reference. So the indemnification, if the agreement is terminated or expires, then our indemnification will continue for 1 year after that period of time. So we have extra indemnification. If the project is basically pulled, if the developer at some point says, we're not going to do the project anymore, which they certainly have the right at any point to do, they would presumably terminate this agreement, but we'd still have indemnification for 1 year after that in case any problems emerged after they left town. So it's to protect the city.
Okay, and then if it is approved and there's litigation after it's approved, does that indemnify us for 12 months from that point as well?
The agreement
was strictly. Go ahead.
Yeah, this agreement is meant to provide full indemnification until such point as either the project is not approved or it's terminated, If the project is approved, then the conditions in those permits would then provide indemnification that would continue pretty much for the life of any possible lawsuits that might show up. So we're getting basically indemnification at the front end when typically we wouldn't get it until permits are issued at the discretion of the city.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. I like the answers.
Are you prepared to move approval?
Absolutely. Move approval. Consent agenda item A5.
I'll second it, and I'll just, I want to thank Chris and his firm for the work you did on this. It saves the city a tremendous amount of money. There is the indemnification clause, and also thank you for noting that this is commonly done for major developments in a large number of cities. So I appreciate your firm's work on that, and yours, Chris. Thank you very much. With that, any other, Councilmember Addis? Yes, I see your hand.
I wanted to echo those comments and say thank you for the explanation. I think it really helps the public understand, but I'm really proud of staff for getting something like this in place, and I think it's totally appropriate and support Councilmember Heller's motion.
Great. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. Thanks, Councilmember Heller, for great questions. And with that, we'll go ahead and roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And that brings us to our first business item this evening is item C-1. This is certification of results of Citizens Initiative petition entitled an initiative measure to prohibit tent camping and all classes of vehicle camping, dry or otherwise, in certain specified areas of the city of Morro Bay, and either 1, adopt the ordinance without alteration, or 2, submit the ordinance to the qualified voters of the city as a proposed measure as a regular municipal election, or 3, order a report on the effects of the proposed initiative. So I will turn it over to Mr. Collins and Ms. Swanson, I believe.
Correct. And I just want to say thank you to Dana and Heather for their handling of this, and to the community members who brought this forward. And, there's a lot of work went behind this to sort of make sure the process was followed, and there's a lot of steps involved. And that's on top of an already very, very busy schedule and calendar for our clerk's office. So I just wanted to note that, and I'll let Dana take it from here. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen and go through a short presentation. So as the Mayor said, we are here tonight to certify the results of the Citizens Initiative petition and for the Council to discuss and provide direction on next steps. On December 29th, the initiative petition was presented and filed in the clerk's office. Upon review, it was determined the number of signatures on those petitions prima facie was in excess of 10% of the city's registered voters, and 10% would be 820 signatures. The clerk accepted it for filing and coordinated with the county registrar of voters to verify those signatures. Upon completion of that process on January 27th, it was determined there were 869 valid signatures, and the petition was deemed sufficient. Mayor, I believe, read the text that is proposed to be added to the municipal code, which is tent camping and all classes of recreational vehicle camping, dry or otherwise, are prohibited along Embarcadero Road, including Tidelands Park and along Coleman Drive, up to and including Morro Rock parking lots. This shall not affect any private business. For tonight, the election code requires the council to take one of the following actions. Either adopt the ordinance without alteration, either at this meeting or within 10 days, or submit the ordinance without alteration to the voters pursuant to section 1405. That could only be done at the November election if that decision were made tonight. or the council may order a report of the effects of the proposed measure that would be presented to the council within 30 days. I've been asked why we can't place the item on a June special election if that decision were made tonight. And there's a provision that a very narrow time frame for placing a ballot measure on a special election. The election must be called 88 to 103 days prior to the election day, which would be February 25th to March 11th. So tonight's meeting is too early. We could only place the item on the November election, but if that decision were made on March 8th, it's within that window, and the council would have the option to place it either on the June or the November election. The report that has been recommended by staff would consider any effects of the proposed initiative would have on these list of items and a fiscal impact, effect on land use, consistency with the city's general and specific plans and housing element, a number of other things, and any other matters the legislative body requests to be in the report, which certainly would provide good information to the council to make a decision. And based on that, staff is making the recommendation that the council request a report by directing the city manager to evaluate on a citywide basis the effects of the proposed initiative measure in accordance with Elections Code Section 9212 and prepare a report to be presented to the council at the March 8th meeting. Should the council wish to consider the other two options, the documents to do so and the information to do so have been provided in the agenda packet to either adopt the ordinance or to call an election in November. And that is my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, thank you, Dana. And let me just echo what Scott Collins said. I know that you and Heather spent a tremendous amount of time in short order getting this done very efficiently and very effectively. And on behalf of myself and the council, I just want to say thank you for all of your great work in doing that. I know there are a zillion other things going on as well, but this is an important item, and appreciate your expertise, your excellence, and Heather's assistance with making this happen. I'll open it up for council questions. I can see your hand now, Councilmember Heller. I found out where it is.
Good, thank you.
Go ahead.
So, Dana, I would like to ask you, I had a brief conversation with you about what the process was like. Could you explain for the public what you went through to verify this petition, you and Heather?
Yeah, certainly. The voter registration records are held by the county clerk's office, and those are confidential records that they provide access to clerks when they need to verify signatures. So every signature on the petition, and there were 1,027, I believe, we look at the voter record and we compare the address, the handwriting, make sure they were registered to vote as of the date that it was signed. And we also verify the declaration of circulation, which is at the bottom of each petition section.
Okay, and so as you explained it to me, the hardest part possibly is confirming the signatures are legitimate. Is that fair to say, or?
Every step is a tedious process to make sure you don't begin to just blur over and check the box. So each step is important, but the signature, we take a lot of time to find similarities. We don't throw things out just because they didn't put their middle initial or they signed Bill instead of William. You really look at the handwriting very carefully if everything else lines up, and only discard those that are clearly different handwriting.
Okay, well, I want to join. Thank you, and Heather, for all your work on this. I want people to understand how laborious of a procedure it is to go through this. And I also want to thank the residents who took the time out of their lives to pass a petition around and get signatures. This is how it's supposed to work. And whether you were for or against this particular issue, hats off to the people who went out there and knocked on the doors and got these signatures. And like I say, this is how it's got to work and supposed to work. So thank you for that. Those are my only questions and comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Heller. Councilmember Addis, please.
Yeah, I so appreciate Councilmember Heller's comments about thanking those that passed the petition, and I wanted to add on to those thank yous by also thank yous to staff who have worked on the program, worked on counting the ballots. So many things have gone into this particular item, and I do feel like council needs more information about the effect of the proposed initiative. So whenever discussion's over, I'm ready to move on that.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-1 on the agenda this evening. Public comment is now open. And James, do we have any public comment?
First hand raised. Looks like it's from Betty Winholtz.
Welcome, Betty.
Hi, that's Betty Winholtz again, and on behalf, of the three proponents of this initiative, I want to thank your clerk's office, Ms. Swanson, and her helper, Ms. Heather, for sitting with us for 2 days in the county clerk recorder's office, going through all the details of this, plus the count we did in the city hall ahead of time. It is laborious, but it's so important, as stated earlier, and we appreciate that their honest, good work tries to promote the public to solidify what it is that they're trying to do, and when we make errors, or not even errors, but when we try to do our best at something we're not professional at, that they understand that and are willing to go with the law on that. So thank you. I also want to thank Ms. Swanson for the presentation this evening. It clarifies my email regarding why the report is important. It did not appear to be the way I understood it, but her presentation this evening explains that we can get it on the June ballot if you do go with the report as a potential. I understand it could still also go on the November ballot, but certainly since the public is ready to deal with this topic, to speak on this topic, I think it would be efficient and effective to do it sooner rather than later, and particularly since we're having a local election anyways, in light of Councilmember Ford's seat. It's only a couple of $1,000s extra, and so it fits in with what would be happening in June. So we thank you, and we encourage you to go with item number 3.
Thank you, Betty. James, next public comment, please.
All right, next hand raised is from Carol Truesdale.
Yeah. Welcome, Carol.
I have to unmute myself. Thank you very much, council and staff. And I personally want to thank Dana Swanson again. It was a rainy day on December 29th when we all came into your office and went ahead and made the initial counting. It takes a village to make things right. And Dana just fosters that in the professional manner in which she handled the entire situation. I could not be at the county recorder's office. I was going through a battery of tests at that particular time, but I do want to personally thank you, Dana, and also Betty Winholtz and Linda Donnelly for them stepping up in my stead, and because I was one of the originators of this initiative. And just say thank you. And I think it's really important that this goes to the vote of the people. Our voices have been silenced for so many years, and I realize that this is really geared towards the Harbor Department, but I feel that there are other avenues that the Harbor Department can get revenue to make things work for them. So again, my kudos to you, Dana, and your staff, and the time that you presented coming in from your vacation to do this. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Carol. James, next public comment, please.
All right, I don't see any more hands up, so you should be good to go.
Good. I'll close public comment on C1, bring it back to council, and I believe Councilmember Addis wanted to make a motion.
I do, Mayor, and I just want to reiterate my thanks. I know we have talked for such a long time about how to raise revenue for the harbor, and this is one really creative idea had been talked about for a long time, and it's taken a lot of effort and time on the part of staff. And it's one of the reasons that I want to be really thoughtful about making a decision. And it's one of the reasons that I want to move the staff recommendation that we bring this back. I'm trying to get the language in front of myself. The staff recommendation that we request a report on the effect of the proposed initiative, because I want to understand this in depth. I understand the community feedback on it. I have felt some of those things myself, and I also know how much we need to fund the harbor and how much time and effort has gone into this. So I want to weigh it carefully.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Uh-oh, now that tie is going to go to, I think I heard Councilmember Barton kind of move forward first. So I'll take a movement by Councilmember Addis, seconded by Councilmember Barton for the staff recommendation, and ask if there are any other comments. Councilmember Heller?
Yes, I would like to. I don't know how this vote's going to turn out either tonight or in the future, but I really want to applaud the Harbor Department for scrambling, finding ways, creative ways to generate revenue at the beginning of a pandemic when people stopped coming here and we didn't really know what to do. We're burning through our reserves very quickly. They came up with this idea. They rolled out a website. They did it completely on their own with a great staff. And whatever happens here tonight and in the future, hats off to them for responding quickly. Scott Graham and his department getting the application to the Coastal Commission, getting an emergency permit in 60 days from the Coastal Commission, which is like warp speed. So whatever happens with this, kudos to staff for doing a great job with this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Heller. Well stated.
So one more thank you, Mayor. Sorry.
I didn't know if your hand was still up.
I just wanted to also say thank you to the Harbor Advisory Board and the work that they do around. I'm the liaison to the board, and I know that they have incredibly in-depth discussions around how to raise revenue for the harbor. Different members, have different thinking on this, but it's I just appreciate them as volunteers to the community that are also putting a lot of time and energy on this.
So I can just say echo ditto to all your comments, everybody. I appreciate that. A couple of emphasis comments. First, Councilmember Heller's point about this being, I think your words were democracy in action. I agree. I want to applaud the folks that took the time to passionately go out and get signatures because they were so concerned about this, and that's the way our government works, and I'm proud of our community for doing this and for making this happen. I know, and thank you for your comments about our staff. I know they appreciate it and they work extremely hard. So thank you for recognizing them, Ms. Winholtz and Ms. Truesdale. I think that's very important. And I'll just say, I'll be supporting the motion, but secondarily, I would like to engage some of that passion and some of that energy to assist us in fixing our harbor department. And this is no slam on Mr. Endersby or any of his staff, but it is a very difficult business model that they have worked hard to try to improve, along with the Harbor Advisory Board, as Councilmember Addis has stated. And I'm so appreciative of both bodies, staff and the HAB itself. But, in 10 years, the revenues for the Harbor Department have increased only 4%. In 10 years. So if you look back 10 years ago, the revenues are basically flat. And expenses over a 10-year period have increased 0.05%. 0.05%. So it's not like Mr. Endersby and staff haven't been working hard to control expenses, because they haven't literally gone up in 10 years. This is a revenue issue that is significant and concerning for the city. the capital needs a number about $600,000 to $1 million a year in unfunded capital improvement needs that we need to, as a community, fix. And so this is an important issue. I know it's controversial. We all appreciate our bay, our view, the natural beauty of this community that we're so blessed to live in. And I just wanted to acknowledge that that for all of us, I think this was a bit controversial. I know our discussion echoed that. But again, my final comment is just to thank the community for their passion regarding this and to engage that passion in the future to help us look at potential further opportunities for revenue enhancement at the harbor. So I'll stop with that. And if there are no other comments, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you again, Dana and Heather, for all your work. And Eric, keep up the good work, man. Okay, this brings us to item C-2. This is authorization for attendance at the CMANC annual Washington, D.C. Washington Week meetings and discussion of Washington Week agenda. And Mr. Endersby, you're back up.
Still here. Thank you for the thoughts on that previous item. So Washington Week is probably back, at least it is virtually, like it was last year and potentially in person. So bring it back like we have every year. Our the rough agenda that we did last year and what we're looking at potentially this year, an authorization to attend. We're recommending up to a 3-person delegation this year. Of course, the mayor and harbor director, myself, and potentially the public works director, Greg Qualick, depending on what pans out with some of the developments on the wharf and other things we're looking at in Washington, D.C. Fiscally, historically, this trip ends up for the 2-person delegation costing about $8,000 for airfare, hotel. We've been fortunate enough to get a grant from the Cable Committee, which we're applying for again, to cover all of those costs again. And so hopefully we'll get that again if we end up going to Washington, D.C. again this year. So we'll see how that pans out. Washington Week, of course, is the week with CMANC, the California Marine Affairs and Navigation Conference, where we go back to Washington, D.C. and lobby primarily for our dredging funding to keep the Corps of Engineers here and dredging our harbor, without which our harbor would quickly turn dangerous at the harbor entrance and somewhat non-navigable in the interior channels. We certainly couldn't dredge it ourselves. The Dredge Yaquin is here every year with about $3 million worth of work, and about every 6 to 8 years, the Corps comes through with $8 to $9 million worth of work on the rest of the channel. So, given what we just spoke about a minute ago with their flat revenues, imagine trying to crack that nut. So, we really rely on the Corps and Congress and our Congress people and all the other players in Washington, D.C. to keep the money flowing for our dredging. And of course, that's not the only thing we go to Washington, D.C. for. We're there on behalf of our commercial fishermen often, depending on what sort of fishery issues are at the forefront in Washington, D.C. We go and for other reasons as well. In recent years, it's been the wharf and the funding we've gotten from the federal government and support there. So really important that we go there. Some people might say, well, can't you just go and do this all virtually all the time? Well, it really is important, and it sounds corny, but you see, little Girl Scout group standing there at their senator's door waiting to talk to the senator. It does make a difference when you show up in Washington, D.C. and shake hands and talk to people and show face-to-face what really the issues are. It makes a difference. So in a weird sort of way, Washington, D.C. does work that way. So we continue to go there and lobby for what our needs are. So this year, CMANC is planning, at least tentatively right now, for a hybrid methodology this year. The week of February 21st, a couple weeks out, will be virtual meetings like we did last year, Zoom or online, with authorizing committee and staff members of Congress and talking about appropriations, what the president's budget looks like, which should be coming out fairly soon, the draft budget fairly soon. And then later in the year, potentially April and May, depending on what happens in Washington, D.C. in terms of them opening up to personal visits again. We'll be going in person to visit the executive branch, OMB, departments of commerce, transportation, all those sorts of good folks, for all the in-person meetings that we have where we march around in groups with CMAC. And then also our lobbyist, Carpy and Clay, Julie Minerva back there in DC, sets up one-on-one meetings with the mayor and myself, with, for instance, Congressman Carver Hall and Senator Feinstein and others, to visit one-on-one and convey our needs and wants and hopes, dreams personally. So we'll see what pans out as the pandemic sort of progresses here and things change. And it seems like they're changing pretty regularly and pretty quickly with the California opening up. So we'll see what happens in Washington, D.C. This year, our primary topics, of course, will be dredging that I spoke about earlier and the funding for that. This year, the Corps of Engineers is recommending $3.2 million to go towards FY23's budget for the Yaquina, and then probably in 25 will be when we need the bigger harbor dredging, when we have the dredge that comes through and does the whole harbor. The True Match Heritage National Marine Sanctuary nomination is up for establishment. As you know, you took a position a couple of meetings ago with some comments to NOAA on what we think of that sanctuary establishment and some things we'd like to see if it gets established. So that'll be a hot topic this year. Fisheries, of course, commercial fisheries and all the things that affect them, which are a myriad of different issues, from the potential sanctuary, offshore wind, fishery regulations. There's all sorts of other Biden administration and other initiatives that potentially could affect fisheries. So we'll be going there and speaking to our folks in DC on behalf of our fishermen. And of course, offshore wind, which I spoke of, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. We've been talking to BOEM for a number of years now, probably 5 now, since Castle Wind came to town, and we've been supporting Castle Wind in their bid for offshore wind energy here. And of course, the good things and the potential negative things that could bring. So we're hoping to bring those issues to Washington, D.C. The United States Coast Guard, of course, we've always supported our Coast Guard, whether we go to D.C. or not, and especially the last few years in the building of their new building. I am happy to announce that there are 2 new women that have been billeted in the Coast Guard Station Morro Bay due to that expansion they just did. They're still looking for housing and trying to figure out exactly how they're going to fit in, but they are living up to that promise, and they've brought some female folks into the station, which is a great thing to see. Congressman Carbajal continues to be the chair of the Coast Guard Maritime Transportation Subcommittee of the House Transportation Committee, which is big from the Coast Guard standpoint and from transportation. And he's also on a couple other strategic forces subcommittees, so we continue to work with him on those fronts. National Estuary Program, of course, we support them and have continually since their inception, let's say 21 years ago now. I think they're on the 21st anniversary. So we like to see the continued funding for the National Estuary Program. And then our legislators and what the different issues are of the day. The wharf, again, has been a pretty dominant topic that we've gone to DC for as well. And had good productive time. So again, it's important, I think, that we continue our participation in CMAC and going to Washington, D.C. if we go this year. We'll see what happens. The last time we went was like a month before the pandemic shut everything down. As you recall, that was got in just under the wire there. So hopefully this year we'll get back to normal, but we'll see. And so we'll continue to be involved and work with our lobbyist, Julie Minerva, back in Washington. With that, I leave it up to any questions or comments.
Hey, thank you, Eric. I very much appreciate it. And first, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions. Councilmember Ford.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question for Mr. Indersby. Can you give me an idea of, the difference between the in-person encounter that you had when you went to Washington Washington, D.C. in the past versus 2021 when you had to do it virtually? Can you explain to me and to everyone listening in tonight the importance of that face-to-face, in-person contact, if it is safe, as you said, and the pandemic is in a place where it is safe to send you, and the importance of spending that money to send you there?
Sure, Councilmember Ford. Of course, yeah, the safety is obviously the number one issue, and make sure everyone, it's okay to be there. So it's like we had some public comment earlier. There's no substitute for face-to-face. The Zoom meetings we had last year, while as a big group we were there, and we've, CMANC has had its non-DC meetings, its regular conferences by Zoom as well. And it's just, when you're there in person and you're sitting at a table, even if you're in a room with 15 or 20 other people, as we often are, you can see the congressperson, you can see the staffer, you can get their attention, and just really the sense of the room and what's going on, and the whole, the feeling and the passion and everything else gets conveyed when you're there in person versus on the screen. You're on a screen and you're on TV, and it's not the same. And again, I brought up the example of the Girl Scout troop. And I'm sure Mayor Henning can attest. All the different people you see waiting at the door of your congresspeople and your senators. When you show up in person and you take that time and effort, it's like writing a letter, a comment letter to a city council and making public comment. It just carries more weight. It shows that you care more, and it makes a difference. Again, it sounds corny, but it makes a difference. Democracy works in that way.
I don't think it sounds corny. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Councilmember Heller. Sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. So Eric, sounds like a busy time. And looking through the agenda, I didn't see that you're meeting directly with NOAA to discuss the proposed marine sanctuary. Did I miss something, or do you talk with other folks there about our concerns and the concerns of the commercial fishermen? Who will you be speaking to there about it?
Well, in regard to the sanctuary itself, it will be NOAA Marine Sanctuaries, who we have a pretty ongoing dialogue and always have for a number of years, and especially about these sanctuary nominations, the new sanctuary nomination. It will be primarily with NOAA, but we will also convey the city council's position and concerns to Congressman Carver Hall, our senators, and other key legislators that are on committees that are relevant to commercial fisheries and marine sanctuaries and those sorts of things.
Okay, so I must have missed that on there, but I can't overstate the importance of the commercial fishermen's interests and needs with respect to this sanctuary, and I hope you represent them well, and sure that you will in Washington. And thank you for all your work on this. Sounds like an extremely busy, exciting, exhausting few days. So that's all
I will say amen to that, because this will be my, I think, 4th year if we do go to DC. I'll add, as part of the report, I have obviously found it to be very highly effective. In person, obviously much more preferred than virtual, hoping that we're going to be able to go. But we have created long-term relationships with key individuals at the federal level with our senators and Congress persons, as well as the agencies that Councilmember Heller talked about. We go to multiple agencies. Every year we visited NOAA, BOEM, with regard to offshore wind. The Bureau of Reclamation, hoping for grants there. And when our wharf actively was looking for financing, obviously we went to EPA for WIFIA, et cetera. So it's a whirlwind trip, lots of hours of interaction, very, very fruitful in my opinion, and continues on throughout the year with those relationships that are created. So I appreciate, Eric, your report, and if there are no further questions, I will open up public comment. Okay, looks like there aren't. So public comment is now open for item C-2. And James, do we have any public comment?
I don't see any hands raised, so you should be good to go.
Okay. Closing public comment on C-2, bringing it back to council, and I'll entertain a motion or further discussion. Councilmember Heller.
I move approval of item C-2.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Ford had her hand up and I didn't see it.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Heller, seconded by Councilmember Addis for the staff recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries. carries 5-0.
Thank you. And Eric, thanks for your organizational work on this. I don't know if you mentioned the potential for reimbursement also, but you may want to just really quickly highlight that. Grant?
Yeah, the cable committee?
Right, yes.
Yeah, I did mention that. We are.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
We are applying for a cable committee grant for the bulk of the cost, the $8,000 cost. We've been awarded the last, probably 20 years. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to item C-3 this evening. This is City Council Goals and Action Items Update. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Collins, our City Manager. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen and do a brief PowerPoint presentation. One moment, please. Okay, can you see that all right? I'm not hearing anybody, but yes, I assume that's okay. All right.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Just going to give an update on our city goals progress and talk briefly about the goals process that got us to where we are today. So back last summer timeframe, July, August, September, the city sought input from our community for a variety of methods, including a survey, talking to our advisory boards and commissions, hosting a couple community forums, and talking to our business groups to really try to get a sense of where the community was at. Typically, we launched those efforts in the January timeframe, but we were postponed because of COVID and some other issues really getting in the way of having a robust process. So we started at mid-year. Council, following all that input and then having really good discussions through a facilitated discussion with Summer Curley of the Center for Organizational Effectiveness, came forward with 5 approved city goals and short-term action items approved in November of 2021 to go into effect for all of 2022 calendar year and into early part of 2023 until we start the process over again. 35 short-term action items were identified and approved to try to get in during that period of time, and staff committed to providing quarterly updates to council on progress. So here are the adopted goals, 5. They're improve public infrastructure, achieve economic and fiscal sustainability, address housing needs, climate action, and improve community health. There's no differentiation in terms of priority. Again, these were adopted back in November of last year. I did work with a local designer to create something that didn't look like a spreadsheet with all this information, and so we're going to post that to the city website following the meeting tonight. But here's a little sneak peek. So I'm going to go through the 5 goals and the attendant short-term actions that were approved. The first is the public infrastructure goal, and really the goal statement surrounds addressing kind of cleanliness, particularly in our tourism zones, looking at capital assessment and long-term traffic circulation in the Embarcadero. The short-term action items, I won't list those out, but you can see them on the PowerPoint slide here, ranging from a speed survey all the way to pursuing grant opportunities in the Coleman Beach area. The next goal is fiscal sustainability and economic vitality, largely around how to address our unfunded liabilities related to pension obligations while also striving to have a competitive compensation for our existing employees. Determine potential paths to secure funding for capital needs. This was discussed in an earlier item tonight, particularly around the harbor. And support expedient catalyst site development. The short-term action items are listed below, some of which we've already started to take off the list, including getting a lobbyist to help us obtain funding at the state level for city projects, conducting a fee study, having a professional look at our pension liabilities, etc. Housing is the next goal. This is primarily around educating the council on all the new and existing state legislation related to housing. I'm sure there's going to be another plethora of housing bills that will come forward on this cycle at the state level. Identify opportunities for additional housing options and explore partnership opportunities, and can continue the great work of the Community Development Department's effort to expedite the development review process. Short-term actions include things like updating our zoning code, creating a free template for accessory dwelling units for the public, educating council, and continuing work with the Planning Commission in terms of our review of our planning process, as an example. Climate action is a new goal identified by council, and the goal statement includes participating with our partner agencies in SLO to support climate action planning efforts. I think most cities are due for updating theirs, including the city of Morro Bay. Educate council on the technical terms around climate action. Things have evolved significantly over the last several years in terms of what the science is telling us, but also in terms of how we can respond, both in trying to slow down climate change, but also being resilient in the face of the effects that are already in front of us today. And consider opportunities to reduce our reliance on carbon-producing energy sources. The short-term action items are plentiful down below, so I won't go through all of them, but they cover a wide range of actions the city can take in the next year or so. And then the last goal, a new goal as well, is community health. Goal statements include creating a plan to really help those, educate those around vaccinations and other health components related to the COVID-19, and educate council and staff about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, and engage in a community conversation. The short-term actions include the DEI issues, also working with the county on homelessness efforts and exploring opportunities how we can take part in that, and looking at ways to enhance offerings for our youth, including partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. So as of now, I think we're 3 months in, we've made progress on 12 of the 35 action items. It's pretty good. Staff is currently reviewing and evaluating our existing staffing and resource levels so that we can maintain core services and meet these emerging issues and opportunities. And so we imagine there'll be a lively discussion at the upcoming mid-year budget discussion at the next council meeting, and further into the fiscal year 22-23 budget development process. So that, I'm just really serving this up for you all to receive the update, but of course we'll take direction as necessary if there's anything council would like us to kind of review or look into a bit further. So happy to answer any questions you all may have. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, thank you for the update. Very comprehensive and appreciated. Councilmember Barton has a question, please.
It's not a question, it's a thank you for the work on getting a graphic artist involved in this. It is so much easier to digest this in this format versus the all-word format. So thank you so much for doing that.
No problem. My copy, the Word document copy, is written all over, so I can't even read it anymore. So I needed something else. So.
Great job on it. Yeah. Thank you.
I can't take credit for it, by the way. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So.
Councilmember Heller.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Sir.
Scott, great job. So can you get these 35 things done in 2 years? I mean, isn't that the timeline for all this stuff?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, we're gonna do our best. I think there's a little teaser there on one of the last slides, just making sure we're resourced properly to address that. And some of that may require recalibration of how quickly we can get these done. But some of these move quickly, and others are a lot more involved. So it's a great question, and we'll continue to keep you all updated, but it's sort of the balance of that and trying to keep up with the normal day-to-day.
I have great confidence in you and your staff. The other question is, the 5 goals may not be prioritized, but how are you prioritizing the 35 action items?
Good question. We're trying to look at it sort of by department, so that we're not overwhelming any one particular. We try our best, and sometimes that's not feasible, but we're trying to get things done in each of the goal areas, so that we're not overemphasizing one over the other. Some things obviously a little more pressing, like the financial, the picture, and some of it has to do with what opportunities are being brought to us by folks outside of the city. So we do need to respond to those in kind. But I think we're trying our best to balance in all 5 of the categories.
So at some point, and maybe the mid-year budget session would be the place, would you be bringing forward your prioritization and, in addition to a budget, kind of a guesstimate timeline on what it's going to take to accomplish the action item?
I think so. I think we could do something along those lines if we feel at that time, if we're not going to be able to get things done, what it would take. But I think we're still in line, especially. Let's just say the discussion would be spirited on the 22nd of this month, and we want to sort of put it in the filter of how to get these done, as well as keep on track with our core services. So I don't know exactly what format that's going to take, but we definitely will filter it through the goals.
Great. Those are my questions. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Heller. Councilmember Ford, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, Councilmember Heller asked one of my questions. So I guess I'll just go to thank yous. But I just want to say, again, I want to echo what Councilmember Barton said. The graphics are amazing. Coming from my background, I certainly appreciate seeing something fun like that. And it's just visually easier to understand. And I think that even plays into the whole DEI idea, making something, a little bit more it's understandable, and I think it will be great. You say you're posting it to the website, or what did you say that you're placing these?
Yes, that's we have on the front page of the city website. There's on the left-hand side. There's a column for sort of kind of higher clicked things, and that does include city goals. So we will update that page. So when you click on that, it should lead you directly to these this graphic. And then I'm also working with the same design firm to hopefully do a quick video to sort of take a lot of the guesswork out and kind of visualize what this looks like in the community at a very, very, very low cost. So trying to move into the 21st century.
I think that's great. What is it? The 7 different ways of learning, visual, right. All the different things. So I think that that's really important that you're taking that into consideration and working on that. I just want to say thank you, because I think our list of action items is ambitious, but think big, I think is important. But I do recognize that we do have limited staff who is working so hard to do their normal day-to-day jobs, and then also attack these action items as well, and to see them, to follow through. So just thank you. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you, Councilmember Ford. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-3 on our agenda, and public comment is now open. And James, any public comment, sir?
I currently see no hands up, so you should be good to go.
Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council, add my thanks and echo the comments that were made. Scott, love the format, really appreciate it. I'm a visual, it really helps. And it's always a reminder to me of what I see as massive amount of work that our staff undertakes every time we get these reports on our goals, good progress to date, and look forward to getting a better understanding of the resource needs as we get to the mid-year budget to accomplish these. So kudos to you, all your department heads and staff. Job well done, and this is receive and file. Councilmember Addis has a comment as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, because I think I'm one of those council members who's constantly pushing for more, and I know it's a lot, and then I still ask for more, and it's so apparent how hard staff works, and it's a real reminder when we get to see the progress that's being made, how much the work pays off. But I do recognize that it is a lot, and I want to say thank you to staff for taking on as much as you do.
Well, thank you, all 5 of you. That the meeting we had, it was facilitated last year. I think it was a really good collective understanding of what it takes to keep the city going and then look into the future. And all 5 of you have been very supportive of that process. And it's very iterative, especially with a lot of new staff, 3 new department heads in the city. but a lot of new energy, which is exciting and also overwhelming. So we appreciate that your understanding of that and willing to talk through some of what could be some tough conversations, but ultimately trying to get our community where the community is telling us they want to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. And thank you, Councilmember Addis, for your comments. All right, this is a receive and file. That brings us to item C-4, consideration of resolution of support for statewide efforts to expand healthcare for all in California. And again, Mr. Collins, you are up.
Oh, that was quick. Which item are we on?
C4. Sorry about that. You need a restroom break?
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is mine. Imagine I thought this was going to be Dana's. So yes, let me get to this real quick.
You're back.
Yes. So at the last council meeting, the council directed staff to bring back an item for council discussion related to California Assembly Bill AB 1400. This is healthcare for all. Very short presentation here. The bill itself was slated to need to move through the various committees at the end of this month in order to meet all the rules of the legislature, which is impossible to really understand. I'm just beginning to understand it. But ultimately, it did die in the Appropriations Committee, so it's not proceeding forward. But nonetheless, the goal behind that is to expand healthcare to all Californians, to include things like hospital, surgical, outpatient services, primary and preventative care, emergency services, women's reproductive care, dental and vision care, et cetera. It is a hindrance for a lot of Californians. But at this time, it is not moving forward. So really what the resolution does is try to capture the spirit of AB 1400, was written as such. I appreciate the quick work of Dana Swanson on that, while also attending to the validation process for the RV petition. So she's a superstar, as is Heather. So, this again sort of tries to capture the spirit of what AB 1400 was seeking to accomplish, so that if future legislation like that were to come forward, the mayor could send a letter on behalf of council if it sort of captured the spirit of that legislation. So happy to answer any questions you have, although I must say at the outset, I am not an expert in healthcare. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Scott. Councilmember Heller.
Yeah, so Scott, I recognize you're not an expert in healthcare, and appreciate your acknowledgement of that. We've had a lot of comments from the public on this, and I guess the main question I have is, how did this kind of global issue that is out of our municipalities' scope, in my opinion, come to be on the agenda? What is the process? Did you initiate this, or did this come from the mayor, frankly, or council members calling in? I'm kind of feel like I'm out of the loop here, and I was surprised to see it. So can you explain that process for me?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to do so. Just globally with regard to the agenda setting process, I think we have a pretty good routine. Cities across the board do it differently. So I'm not saying ours is the best, but the way it works here is we use the goal setting process to really try to establish clear understanding across the board, what types of items will come forward. So there's very few surprises. And then of course we have the normal course of business items like the budget process, the mid-year budget process, elections, et cetera, that are kind of governed by the law and how they show up and when they show up, and land use things as well. So anything that sort of lives outside of those normal course of business or agreed upon city goals, we have the future agenda process, which is the end of each council meeting, whereby items that aren't already on consideration for council can be brought forward at a later time if 3 council members agree to do so. It usually comes in the form of one council member asking for it and seeing if there's concurrence amongst the other members. Those items that come forward are typically exploratory in nature. It's not a go out and do hundreds of hours of research. It's usually just kind of a few hours of work At least that's been my experience in doing these. And then if there's a lot more to come, then, you know, it can branch off into something more extensive. In this case, it's a resolution regarding state legislation, so not a lot of work involved. I believe four council members supported bringing this forward at the last council meeting. And obviously one could argue that with the community health goal that there's a connection between this item and the city council goal of community health. But yeah, the vehicle was the future agenda item, and 4 members of council agreed to ask staff to have this brought forward.
Okay, so are there other ways that things can get on the agenda? Like if I have something that I think I would like to be addressed and I I forget to bring it forward as a future agenda item or whatever, can I call you and say, hey, I'd like to see this on an agenda and maybe get it agendized? Or is that not a process that works?
Yeah, the similar process, Councilmember Heller, if an individual council member, and this has happened in the past, you know, I know this isn't on our work plan, so I recognize that. I want some help to think about how to convey this to my colleagues. You know, we'll try to work on something that helps them understand the context, because you have a few minutes to really kind of explain it. You can't go into detail about what it is because you'd be violating the Brown Act. You can't really have a discussion and arguments or discussion about what should or shouldn't happen. It's really just this particular item. Is there an agreement that this is something we should discuss? Yes or no? 3, say yes, bring it forward. And try to agree upon a time where we can do it so it's not impactful to the rest of the work going on. So if there isn't support for that item from at least 2 other colleagues, then that item doesn't get put forward, it's tabled. Certainly can be brought back at another time or through the goals process.
Okay. And do we have any polling information that supports this resolution?
No, we don't have anything particular on this piece of legislation. Again, I think what we sort of picked up during the surveying that was done last summer, or as it relates to community health, was largely around homelessness and the pandemic. I think there was a lot of concern that showed up in the survey that connected to community health.
Okay. Do you consider this a partisan or a non-partisan issue?
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question.
Okay, that's an answer. Yeah. Considering the fact that this particular piece of legislation that's referenced in the resolution has been pulled in Sacramento, should we even be discussing this at tonight's meeting?
That's a policy question. You know, I think when it was asked to be brought forward, the legislation was kind of at its apex, if you will, in terms of timing. So, you know, we're not going to change the council meeting timeline to account for that. Sometimes you can bring these things forward in time, other times you can't. So we did try to massage the language so that if it were brought forward in another bill, that could be addressed. Of course, this is the council's prerogative, not staff's. It's up to the council if this is what they want to pursue down the road, or not pass it because AB 1400 is now effectively dead. I mean, that's entirely up to the council.
Okay. Well, since we have no jurisdiction over this issue and it's the fact that it's been pulled in Sacramento, I'd like to move that this item be tabled.
We're in questions, Councilmember Heller. I haven't had public comment yet, so
okay.
I can't let you move there yet. Sorry.
Okay, gotcha, Mayor. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thanks so much.
Scott.
Appreciate that. Thanks for bearing with me. Other Councilmember questions for staff? Seeing no hands. Okay, let me go ahead and open public comment. This is public comment for item C-4 on our agenda this evening. Public comment is now open. And let's see, James, do we have any public comment?
I have a hand up from Walter.
Okay. Welcome, Walter.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Thanks for considering this item. It's important. Municipalities are suffering under the strain of budgets that are impacted by the cost of health insurance for their employees, and certainly in course of negotiations over pay and so forth, pay and benefits, it's a prominent obstacle to our city employees getting pay increases. The ever-rising cost of healthcare, even though the utilization of the system is down in many cases. So it is very much a kitchen table issue for your constituents. It's a budget issue for the city. Frequently, people who are affected by this are in the shadows. They, like you and me, think that the health insurance is going to be there and is going to perform well when we need it. And they're shocked, dismayed, and in some cases kind of ashamed, feeling like, oh, maybe I made the wrong choice when it fails them. And the chair of the Assembly Health Committee, who is a dentist and suffers less of a burden really from the whole payer mechanism than other care providers, finally had to own up. He's been blocking this for years. And finally, he owned up in a very public way. He said, the payment system is broken. There are perverse incentives. There are people skimming, there are middlemen, middle financial entities skimming profit at every step of the way. And something needs to be done. So I think it's important, it's incumbent upon folks who are representatives here that they reflect the views of what's going on in the community and the pain that people are feeling right now. National polling shows that 56 to 70% of people support, in the words of the polls, a system of health insurance paid for entirely by taxes, including more than half of Republicans. And that's significant. I should say there was one more point I wanted to make here, but AB 1400 is going to be back. I've been volunteering to get something like this passed for 18 years. AB 1400 will be back. And to correct Scott, it passed appropriations and went to the floor and was pulled by the author on the floor because there are still some members of the Assembly who weren't quite ready to support it. And so it's incumbent upon us. Our representatives have asked you to weigh in on this. They want to hear from communities. They want to know how people feel. They're gun shy. This is a big change. But the process that would be undertaken with AB 1400 is a very thoughtful one. It's a deliberative one. It could take up to 5 years to complete. So I hope that you will consider it tonight, and I hope you'll pass it. Thanks.
Thank you, Walter. James, next public comment.
Next hand raised is Carol Truesdale.
Welcome, Carol. Carol, are you with us? Is she muted, James, perhaps?
I'm muted. Thank you very much.
There you are.
Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, city staff, Mayor Heading, and council members Addis, Barton, Ford, and Heller. I'm Carol Truesdale, resident in Morro Bay since 1995 and homeowner. At the January 25th, 2022 council meeting, the city council directed city staff to bring forth an item for council discussion for tonight about Assembly Bill 1400, AB 1400, titled Healthcare, which seeks to expand medical health care to all residents in California at taxpayers' expense. Staff responded with agenda item tonight C4, which asks council to approve a resolution in support of AB 14, a single-pay health insurance program for all of California. I'm in opposition to such a resolution for the following reasons. Once again, as with the gun control and abortion issues, council crosses a line between matters of vital local importance to Morro Bay residents and taxpayers on one hand, and statewide and nationwide issues on the other, i.e. gun control, abortion, etc. Further, council has done so without council going to the residents of Morro Bay with the pros and cons of this type of legislation, and without local polling to assess community support. To expend Morro Bay taxpayers' monies, which fund city staff time and council stipends, without first going to the Morro Bay taxpayers to obtain their approval for such expense and time is totally irresponsible. As has often been pointed out to council by many Morro Bay taxpayers, council's job is to focus on the myriad of local challenges, including but not limited to the city's numerous unfunded liabilities, including roads, infrastructure, and services, the CalPERS $1 million negative impacts on city finances, the WRF project approaching $150 million and very behind schedule, lagging businesses development, affordable family and senior housing, and we're all getting up there on the FEMA level, critically endangered city finances, and much more. While AB 1400 had a January 31st, 2022 deadline to clear the Assembly, the funding legislation has a longer time frame. Amendments added by the Assembly Appropriations Committee clarified that CalCare would not be implemented without the necessary revenue mechanisms in place. This bill was not passed by the Assembly. City staff and council needs to focus on Morro Bay's current issues looming on our horizon, not state legislative issues for political gains with upcoming elections soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. James, next public comment, please.
I see no raised hands, so you should be good to go.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Closing public comment on item C4, bringing it back to council for comments. And Councilmember Heller, you were moving into discussion. Did you want to start, or did you want?
I'll start. That'd be great. Thank you, Mayor. Looking at this, I know that we did pass a resolution early on with respect to the former president. We didn't poll our residents, and we voted unanimously, I believe, on that. To me, that seemed like a one-off decision that we made, and it's something I did not intend to come before the council ever again, resolutions at a state or federal level. And we seem to have morphed into bringing things forward that we don't really have jurisdiction over when we have so many critical issues to resolve, streets that need to be paved, harbor department that's unfunded, homeless crisis, number of things like that are very specific that I believe we have been elected to do. Municipal governments across the country are supposed to be nonpartisan. We don't have two chambers that discuss things back and forth like we do on the state and federal levels, and that's intentional because we're supposed to be taking care of business for our residents, fire, police, the kind of on-the-ground needs that are so important. So I think this is another resolution that without polling information, we don't really know what the community feels about this particular resolution, whether it's 90%, 10%, 50-50, whatever those percentages are. We really have no idea. There are many ways as council members and individuals in this community where we can express our personal opinions on state and federal legislation. One of those is the beginning of every one of these meetings. And during council member announcements, there's no reason at all that I couldn't state my personal position on AB 1400 at the beginning of the meeting and urge people to organize or write their legislators or whatever. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I encourage council members to do that. However, for us to bring resolutions forward that are not a specific implementation goal that were clearly identified in the item we just discussed is inappropriate for this body, and it's divisive, and most of the issues that are brought forward are quite complex and really need a fair amount of study before any of us can make a decision. So I think it's appropriate. I'd like to move that we table this item and perhaps as a future agenda item, look at our policies in terms of what agenda items we can bring forward that address state and federal issues.
So you have a motion on the table. Is there a second? So that motion dies for lack of a second. Councilmember Heller, any other comments?
No other comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Other council member comments? Councilmember Addis.
I was talking to somebody today who said, my mother's going to lose health insurance at the end of this year, and I don't know what my family's going to do. I have no idea what's going to happen to us. And so for that reason, and many, many others, I would like to move approval of this motion. And I'd also like to add that I have great faith in this council to be able to do many things at once. I believe that the 5 of us putting our minds together, along with a really, really skilled staff and an incredibly engaged public in Morro Bay, that we can do a lot of things at once. I think that we can be a voice for people who need us, many of whom called in last time and some of whom called in today. And I also think we can attend to really big projects. So I have a lot of faith in those that have been elected by this community. I have a lot of faith in our staff, and I have a lot of faith in our voters that we can do these kinds of things. And I also have a lot of faith in small towns that take on big issues, because it's super important to people like the person I spoke to today who said, I have no idea what I'm going to do when my mom loses her health insurance. Those things are critical. It's important to me to listen to the residents. So I'll just repeat, that's why I'm moving to approve this item.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Councilmember, let me ask if there's a second, first of all, then I'll go for further discussion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, so motion by Councilmember Addis to support the staff recommendation, a second by Councilmember Barton. Councilmember Barton, did you want to speak on the issue?
Yes, I think that this is a very important issue, and it's a very local issue. Councilmember Ford and I both attend EBAC meetings, and we are constantly hearing about the desperation of people who don't have health care, who are having trouble. They may be the working poor, they may be living in their car. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why someone would definitely need more health care than they are getting at the moment. And so I think it's an important issue for our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Barton. Councilmember Ford, your hand is up, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, what's been said before by Councilmember Barton and Addis, I want to echo what they've already said, but I wanted to add my own personal experience. I've only been on council since September, and in that short period of time, when I meet with members of our community, members that live within Morro Bay and also within our county, it's a continued issue that's brought up when I ask, what issues are you facing? And it's healthcare. Most of the time I get that response that the issue with either my paycheck, is impacted by the astronomical hike in healthcare costs, and now I can't afford my car payment, or certain things like that. And I'm not just talking about our unhoused or our significantly lower income families. I'm talking about our middle income families as well, who are suffering from healthcare costs and access to healthcare for our local income families here and individuals here on the Central Coast. As Councilmember Barton has already mentioned, being a part of EBAC, we hear about the lack of access to free or reduced health care here on the Central Coast. And an example of the nearest facility for low and lower to free healthcare is in San Luis Obispo. And often, because of lack of funding, we don't even have pediatricians it's not competitive. And so we don't have pediatricians available. So now we're sending our folks that qualify for Medi-Cal and Medicare, they're having to go all the way to Rio Grande, to Templeton, to Paso, to Santa Maria. And that's costly for them. And more often than not, those families just say, forget it, because I have to leave work, to take off work, to take my child all the way to Santa Maria to get dental care. And that brings up a school state council meeting that I attended. I actually was asking administrators, are you noticing an impact dealing with, healthcare, lack thereof for your students? And does that affect attendance? Does that affect, any other aspect of their school day? And I heard from an individual who works at the middle school who said, heck yes. It's a definite issue. They are having a continued issue with students that have to leave an entire day of school to access healthcare because we don't have anything here locally on the Central Coast that is free or reduced. And so with issues such as these, I believe that making a decision like this is not just a state level. It's not just a national level. This is something on the local level that as representatives, we need to represent all of the people that live in Morro Bay, not just those who can financially afford healthcare, but those who, I believe Walter alluded to it, that often are quiet or in the shadows because, maybe they don't feel confident saying it in public that, hey, I qualify for low or, free reduced healthcare. And so I think that it's important that we're a voice for those people in our community. And lastly, as Laurel also mentioned, our visit, and I said it in my report, that our visit to the safe parking site on Kansas Street was an eye-opener. I heard over and over from Mr. Almashat that many of those people that are there today are there because of healthcare issues. They are unable to work because they suffer from healthcare issues, whether it be physical or mental, and with that, and dental. And because of that, they do not have jobs or they cannot function. And to access that healthcare is so difficult right now that it is such an issue that it is faced by so many. And so I think it would be dishonorable to not represent the people that truly need our help. And I think that our voice is so important for our assembly members and those above in our legislature to hear our voices on the smaller level, that what we are facing here is a small representation of the larger picture. So that's all I have to say, but I support this resolution.
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Ford. I appreciate it. I'm going to start by addressing the process for getting items on the agenda, and I want to be very clear because Councilmember Heller has raised this a number of times, and what I'm going to say is not to be flippant in any way. That's not my intent. But the way it works is that if 3 council members under future agenda items agree that an item is to be brought forward, then no matter what that item is, and I don't mean to be flippant, but if it has to do with lint on one's collar, and the 3 members want to talk about an anti-lint program for the city, then it gets agendized and it comes forward. Now, that's a crazy example, and Jeff, I don't mean this negative in any way, but that's just the way it works. And so the way that this came forward, I think, is very clear at the last council meeting. 4 members supported it. It was brought up, not to point any fingers, but appropriately by Councilmember Barton. She articulated her position. We had a discussion, and we didn't discuss the agenda item, but we had a discussion about agendizing it, and 4 council members supported it. Therefore, please know that the mayor doesn't have the purview to walk into the city manager's office and to say, Scott, put XYZ on the agenda. I don't do that. I can't do that. Nor can you. But what you can do, as Scott described, I think, well, is any of us could walk in there and help interpret what you may want to bring forward in terms of the type of language that might be appropriate to bring to the council so that it's clear and understandable. And so that's the process. The only thing that gets juggled is the timing of placement on approved items that go onto the agenda. This one was timely because it concerned AB 1400, which was basically going to be acted upon very quickly. Therefore, it rose to the occasion. Secondarily, the time required, I talked to Mr. Collins. I believe it was less than 3 or 4 hours of city work to get this report together and to get this done. So extensive resources didn't go into this. I'll address globally, what items I think the council should be discussing versus what items they should not be discussing. Homelessness, is it a local issue or a national issue? Yes. The housing, is it a local issue or a national issue? Yes. Healthcare access, is it a local issue or a national issue? And my answer is yes. There are impacts here as a primary care provider that I have seen over the 15 years that I have worked in the healthcare industry here. We have significant healthcare access problems in this community. We had a what's called a 95-210 rural health clinic in Morro Bay when I first moved here that got shut down basically. That shut down primary care access for our most vulnerable population. We attempted as a city council, we took that on. We created a subcommittee to work with CHCC to try to get the clinic reopened and to get healthcare back into this community that was accessible by individuals that either did not have insurance, which those clinics actually get paid for. Unfortunately, council didn't do it. Now, that might have been a global issue that had local access input impacts that the council grabbed, took hold of, and tried to do something about. That condition continues to exist today. We have folks that do not have access because they can't get to the clinics in San Luis Obispo or Rio Grande or the other 38 communities that CHCC is in across this county and part of Santa Barbara County. And that is terribly unfortunate to me. I won't even go into the national statistics with regard to access and cost of healthcare. I think you all know them well, and they have been articulated well across the board in multiple articles, debates, et cetera, et cetera. I've looked at the emails that I received. I read every one of them. This is split with regard to the community. We have a large number of people that wrote in that wanted the council to take this up and support it. We had others that were adamantly against it. I don't believe the city council is required to, nor is it good leadership to poll the community on every single item that we take up or consider. That is what public comment is for. That's when we're able to take in the comments that the public has regarding issues that are raised. Unfortunately, we're in this environment where we're using Zoom, social media, and I know that limits public comment, and I'm concerned about that as well. My point is that I do believe that it was, I know it was agendized appropriately. I've tried to articulate the process that any of us can use to get something on the agenda. Two, I do believe it's a national and a local issue that has significant impact from a socioeconomic status on our community because of limited access to primary care. And also, my biggest concern, mental health services. The only place one can go for that right now is the county, and they are inundated with regard to issues specifically surrounding COVID-19, their impacts on mental health and such services, such that you're seeing an exacerbation of social issues occur because of lack of healthcare access. So I am passionately adamant about supporting this. I do think AB 1400, and we're not talking about that today, I would have had issues with that. But again, that's not the discussion. This was changed because of the fact that basically that bill is no longer being considered at this time. So to me, this is a local statement that we are concerned about the issues that I have just raised that I believe are very real and were articulated by a number of other council members that this community needs to be concerned about. And I don't believe we're taking inordinate amounts of time and wasting time on issues like this because they are highly important. And I will tell you, we are spending tons of time on all the other issues, as you all know. You heard our goals report just a little while ago, and I can tell you, we're all working hard, and staff is working hard to get things done that are important to this city. For all those reasons, and I will stop waxing eloquently, I will be supporting the motion. However, one portion of the resolution that I can tell you that I'm concerned about. I'm still going to vote for it. However, with an issue like this, and I think Councilmember Heller is right, even though perhaps you don't want it to be on the agenda, I'm not extremely comfortable writing letters about very big issues like this on my own, even though the resolution speaks to that. And I will be bringing those items back for consideration at such time when they occur. I don't think I need to amend the motion at this time. I'll let the resolution stand, but I'll use my good judgment to bring it forward for discussion because, again, I don't want to inappropriately take action without full council consideration and public comment. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Heller, please. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for that explanation. I understand completely where you're at, and I understand the positions of the other council members. I personally have no objection to passing general resolutions expressing our need, but I take issue with expressing drafting resolutions addressing a specific piece of legislation, which is often very detailed and has many pros and cons to it. But there's no question that what you said about the needs are there. I have no problem passing a resolution that expresses the general needs facing our community and sending them to state and federal officials. But that's where it should stop.
Yeah.
That's my final word. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I do agree with that. I see heads shaking as well, and I appreciate it. Thusly, I believe this resolution was amended to be more global, obviously not addressing specifically a bill that is no longer being considered. So, any further comments? Thank you for a good, robust discussion, everybody. I appreciate the engagement and the concern for our citizens, and I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Oh.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Great. Thank you for that discussion. That brings us to the ever famous item D, council declaration of future agenda items. Anything to consider for the greater good? Seeing none? Okay. The next regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council will be held on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. via teleconference. Thank you so much. We are adjourned. Good evening. Be safe and be well.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.